I was kind of concerned.
Oh,
Okay, so my first question was, what was your education path to get to where you are right now?
okay. Um, yeah, let's see. So well, college, I went to like UC San Diego first, and then I went to UCLA, graduated from UCLA, and then I went to graduate school at University of Texas at Austin
Uh-huh.
and did a PhD, and then I did a postdoc after that for 2 years. It was like a joint between UT Austin and the Cancer Therapy and Research Center
Whoa,
in San Antonio.
that's awesome. And then how did you like end up doing that, doing the cancer research therapy thing? Like, was it just kind of something you were already interested in doing, or was it?
Yeah, most of the when you this is good for whoever else is thinking about going to graduate school. When you go to graduate school, you have to really choose a path that's going to get you a job in the end. So you have to think ahead of time what you want to do your chemistry career in, basically, and you have to explore jobs, which is probably why he's doing this. And so I knew already that I wanted to do. I did in graduate school synthetic chemistry, which was, and the professor that I chose was, he funneled people into the pharmaceutical industry, kind of.
Wow.
So, and that's what I had planned to do, and so I was already kind of involved in that kind of stuff, and then for the postdoc, I needed to stay in Texas because my husband was in medical school. And so I was able to work with one of the professors that I had taken a class from, which was on cancer therapeutics, and I was able to like work out a postdoc with him because I had my own funding from the American Cancer Society. So
Wow,
yeah,
that's
so
amazing.
thanks.
See, my next question was, how did you decide like being a professor was like right for you? Especially because I remember, because I took you for the first part of OChem last semester, and I remember you were saying that you used to do lab work in Pasadena or something of the sort.
Yeah.
So how did you like? What made you think that being a professor in the end was like something you wanted to do?
Well, I don't want to make it sound but it was kind of a default at that point. So I worked in Pasadena at a materials company for a year. My husband was at UCLA, so that was like where I could work. That was close to where he was doing his residency. And then I did get like what would be my dream job, which is working for a pharmaceutical company called Amgen in Thousand Oaks. So that's where I worked for 5 years, and that is like that was when it was in cancer research, and that's what I trained to do, and it's absolutely fascinating and fulfilling. But then during all of this time when I was in postdoc and everything, I always believe in Plan B. So you've got Plan A and you've got Plan B. And so I always taught classes, even like I tried to fit one in at a community college when I was in grad school, teach a class, what have you, because I knew that if I had kids, it may not be possible to do everything that I wanted to do. So once I had a child and worked for a while, I knew I couldn't do both of those things well. I couldn't work at my job and do the job that I needed to do, and I couldn't have the child and do what I needed to do raising the child. And so I transitioned to working part-time as a lecturer.
I see.
Yeah.
And like having to make that choice between those two things, would you say that like working at Amgen, was that like, how would you describe the work environment for that? Because it sounds like it's like not a lot, but it's like for you to have to choose between those two things, like how was that work environment working there?
Yeah, it sounds like things have I don't know about in the industry, but I know in graduate school, the group that I worked in was very demanding. You were supposed to be there 7 days a week, and you would pop your head in on that seventh day, but Saturdays you were working, and working was like 10, 12 hours, like you're supposed to be there all the time.
Oh my goodness.
And so that translates into the job, area as well. And so, an 8-hour day was not acceptable, like where I worked. And most of the people were men that worked in my department. There weren't too many PhD women. The women that did work there had spouses that worked there as well. So they could juggle, like I come in early, you stay late, stuff like that. So it just wasn't possible to, spend as much time as you needed to work there. Because I would say in general, like if I was there for 10 hours, that was a reasonable day, And then once in a while I was required on the weekends. So it wasn't that often that I had to work on the weekends. But yeah, so, it was enough that you didn't want to leave your newborn at the daycare for 11 hours or whatever every day, so yeah. But definitely fascinating work still. Yeah, it's a shame at that point there was not really a way to like job share or anything like that. It's not, synthetic chemistry is not really amenable to job sharing because you're running a reaction, you need to follow it along, but maybe they do those kind of things nowadays. I don't know. That was a while ago. So.
Exam. And then for like that line of work, do you think that was kind of the standard at the time? And like working in a lab, do you think that it would be like most labs, it operates the same way, or at least when you were still in the lab?
Yeah, I mean that was definitely the standard at the time for sure. I have heard that things are a little different now, like just with graduate school, even medical school as well, which, people say that's good, that's bad. People don't want to work hard anymore. I don't know. I'm not sure if it's good or it's bad, but it sounds like, there's a little more concern about work-life balance than there used to be. I'm not sure about in the pharmaceutical industry how that is now.
I see. And my next question was, what connections did you feel were the most important for you to make in order to progress in your career?
Definitely choosing that graduate school professor. I had a postdoc that I worked with when I was at UCLA. Like I worked in the lab, at UCLA, and that postdoc helped me choose professors that were going to set my career up, essentially. So like the graduate schools that I looked at had to have a professor that did the right kind of chemistry that was going to get me the job that I wanted to have. And she kind of told me what kind of job I wanted to have because I didn't know anything,
Yeah.
But anyway, so it was just, a mentor is, kind of the key there, I think, and a lot of exploration of what are the options that I can do.
And how, what advice would you give for going about, like, reaching out and, like, getting a mentor? Because I know, at least for me, it's, like, I don't really know where to start, and it's kind of intimidating, especially since I'm in my sophomore year now.
Yeah.
And it's, like, how would you say would be the best way to go about that? Would it just be reaching out and emailing, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think, if you want to go on in chemistry, then, or biochemistry or whatever it is, then you're going to be doing research with someone here at some point. Like you have to if you want to go to graduate school. And so that's kind of like the best start, I think. And then you have to do a lot of online research yourself, probably, because maybe at Fresno State you won't have the exposure that you might at a different university where there's kind of more options, I guess. So a lot of online research as well. So that professor that you work for, and then anybody who's in graduate school in there can probably give insight as well. Some of the graduate students that are in there. Yeah. And a lot of online research too.
That makes sense. Because, I don't know, I know for me, I'm planning on switching my major to biochem, because I'm a biology major right now.
Okay.
But I love the chem stuff a lot
Yeah.
more. I don't know, I think it's just been intimidating reaching out, especially to chem labs, just
Yeah.
because, I don't know, I think it's just the imposter syndrome too of, like, I feel like I would not be good enough to be in the lab.
Yeah.
And it's just been kind of hard, but...
It definitely is, and I will tell you that for sure too. And definitely when I was, this was a long time ago that I worked in this industry, but I had to go interview. I interviewed at, I don't know, probably 8-10 pharmaceutical companies, over the course of, graduating in my postdoc. And, I would go into the room and there's 50 middle-aged men, and there's a woman in the room or whatever. And I'm giving my talk, an hour-long talk to these people. And it's fairly intimidating for sure, especially you look like a young, cute girl out of graduate school or whatever. And so it definitely is intimidating. I think here people are very approachable, so I wouldn't worry about that at all. In the beginning of each year, they have the professors go give little mini lectures. There's two 1-hour lectures, and each professor gives a little mini lecture about what their research is. And at that point, they're kind of looking for people to approach them about if you want to do research, And so I think most of the professors here are pretty approachable in that sense, because they're happy to have people help them in the lab.
Okay, I'll have to be on the lookout for that then.
Yeah.
Would that happen the first couple weeks of the next semester, or should I start emailing
I think
now?
I think they do that in the fall. Yeah. So so that's next semester. I'm like, what semester is it right now? Yeah, they do those in the first 2 weeks of the fall. The chemistry department is part of their seminar program. So I would definitely look for their seminar program, and you can even ask the chemistry department if they're having that or doing that. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then let's see. For someone pursuing a career in organic chemistry, what advice would you give to help decide on what pathway would be the best for them?
Pathway as in, what are you thinking?
Because I guess there's so many different, not forms of chemistry, but it's you can either go medicinal, synthesizing food, or medicine.
So I think you need to, you want to do what's interesting, first of all, but that is not always a career path. So unless you're going to be a professor, right? So you can be a professor in anything that's interesting to you. So if that's what you want to do, is be a professor, then that's something to do. But if you think you want to work in industry, which would have a better pay scale, right? Then you have to do, if you're here, probably you have to do internet research and find out what kind of jobs are out there, because I did synthetic chemistry, and what I learned at that pharmaceutical company is there's all kinds of things you can go to graduate school in. Pharmacology, toxicology, I can't even think of any more right now, but I had a friend who is a toxicologist, and so as a biochemistry major, she then applied to school in toxicology, and she had a great job at the pharmaceutical company that I worked at, and she was able to raise her family, and it's a great career essentially. So that's something I would have never thought of coming out of school, a toxicologist, what do they do, But that still uses your biochemistry degree as well. So there's lots of other little things that you can go to school in that would set you up for particular jobs. Yeah. But I think a lot of internet research is kind of what you end up doing. Yeah.
Toxicology sounds so cool. I didn't even
I didn't even know that existed, and then I was like, oh wow, yeah, she's done great. She's been head of departments and stuff like that,
Wow.
And yeah. Whereas I'm in synthetic chemistry, I was I couldn't balance having the family and doing that at the same time. We actually had our children at the same time, same week at Amgen. So
wow.
when we worked there. Yeah. Anyway.
That's crazy. Let's see. Besides working as an instructor, do you still continue to do lab work? If so, how does that look like for you managing those two things?
Yeah, no, we're just part-time in lecturers, and so there was one point where there was a position here open for a full-time faculty, and they asked me if I wanted to apply for it, and just with my little kids and stuff, that that was the point. I wasn't going to be full-time. So you know, especially when you're brand new, you're working for tenure, so you're putting a lot more time in than after you already have tenure and, you know, doing your lab work. So I don't do lab work right now.
Okay. And let's see. Sorry.
It's okay, you're good.
What skills do you feel are most necessary for deciding to pursue a career in chemistry or even in biochemistry?
So the thing that I liked about chemistry was you could work really hard and you could be good at it. So I didn't feel like there was like this innate intelligence factor that, you know, you had to have, or maybe I couldn't achieve or something like that. And so you had to be willing to dig in and spend a lot of time doing it. And I actually feel that's the same way with organic chemistry itself in the classroom. If you took that book that we have, well, I don't think Nicholas is using the book, but Dr. Corpius is using the book. But if you took that Klein book that we had and you sat down with that and worked through it all, you would do fine, you know? Not you in particular, but students would do fine. If you sit down and, you know, dig into it, you know, can succeed. Someone asked me this question a while ago, but they asked me, what do I think makes a good scientist? And I said, creativity. So actually, the professors who come up with the unique and interesting things to study are actually, they have all that smart, they have all that drive, but they also have this like extra creative, being able to think of the next step, you know.
I see. And you're so right about the organic chemistry thing too, because I know, especially taking your class, like before going into it, I feel like people always not overhype up how scary OChem is. Yeah. But I remember going in, I was so scared. Just because I was like, oh my god, OChem's terrible.
Right. So you fail, people take it 3 times, all this stuff.
Yes. And I was so nervous, but it's like taking your class, it was so, like, it was very easy to follow, especially with the book and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like, I think that's probably my favorite chemistry I've taken so far.
Oh, that's awesome.
Especially compared to like Chem 1A and Chem 1B. It's like,
right.
This really isn't that
It's totally
bad.
different, right?
Yeah.
I know, I agree. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't know. Organic chemistry's been so fun so far.
Good.
Let's see. What are the challenges that you had to overcome when pursuing your PhD in organic chemistry, and in what ways did you manage them?
Let's see. So at that time, there was definitely a gender gap. That's for sure. And, you know, maybe that's not true anymore. I don't know. So that, you know, a lot of the time I had to deal with, just like I told you when I went out to these different pharmaceutical companies to interview, I looked super young, you know, like a super young, cute girl instead of a professional. And I had to make them listen to me that I was a professional, and that was really difficult, actually. We actually had an incident where a recruiter tried to hit on a number of the students, like when I was at UT Austin. So there was things like that were just, you know, swept under the rug or what have you. And anyway, so that was kind of just, you know, anyway, that was part of it. But you know, really, graduate school though was a lot of, it's failure. You fail constantly. And so you have to come up with new ideas and just keep getting back out there, and you know, your reaction doesn't work, you have to do another one. Doesn't work, gotta do another one. Yeah. So it is a lot of failure, but when you have the success, then it's great. Yeah.
And for pursuing your graduate, is that the one where you have to do a thesis for?
Yeah, so for a PhD, they call it a dissertation. They usually call it a thesis for a master's, but yeah.
What was your dissertation?
So I did the total synthesis of a large molecule. It was 28-step synthesis, and
Oh,
so we were close to the end, and so then my thesis is just writing up basically everything, a bunch of stuff you tried, everything that did work, a couple things that didn't work, and some stuff like that. So yeah, just a big book, you know.
Yeah, that's so awesome though. Let me see.
Probably covered a lot of your questions in the other questions. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why I'm like trying to see if there's anything else that.
So really, she did have 12 questions.
Yeah, it was. Anyway, let's see. So this one's a little not
It's
off
okay.
it's a little bit off of chemistry, but did you ever feel drawn to biology at all when studying during your undergraduate? Why do you
Yeah.
feel like things like biology and physics are important when pursuing chemistry?
Yeah, I started as a biochemistry major, which I think stemmed from, I think my dad was a biochemistry major too, but anyway, and then I took like biology, and it was like, this sucks.
Yeah.
You know, that one where you have to learn all the phyla and all the like classes and all that, and I was like, no thank you. Anyway, so I and then also I moved into genetics, which I thought was interesting, but I'd already started doing lab work in chemistry, and so I actually got out of it all completely and went into chemistry. I did not enjoy biology, but yeah, I mean, but you take, you know, your physics. I mean, I think you had to be well-rounded and know a little bit about that, and then about each of those things, and definitely in the job that I did, knowing some of all of that was absolutely useful, for sure. The physics comes into play when you're looking at crystal structures of different molecules, when you're doing computer simulations of different molecules. Then the biology comes into play when you're actually talking with the biologists about the different tests that you're doing on the compounds that you make in different cell lines and stuff. So it all comes into play.
All ties in with each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see. Okay, I actually think that's everything.
Good. Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sure thing. Yeah. It's good to talk with you.
It was good to talk with you too. Thank you also